In countless travel guides, Nepal is described as a land blessed by the gods. Every year, millions of tourists fly in from around the world, hoping to find inner peace in this place. But the moment you actually step out of Tribhuvan International Airport in Kathmandu, what greets you isn't fresh air or spiritual chanting. It is sand whipping through the air and the choking smell of car exhaust. Today, I want to talk to you about a brutal documentary that pulls back the beautiful curtain on Nepal. I've got to warn you right now, after watching what I am about to share, you are probably going to regret it. Because that place you've been dreaming about, that sanctuary where you thought you could cleanse your soul, is actually a suffocating pollution nightmare. Let's start with the air in Kathmandu. This city sits in a valley basin. The basin's geography is like a giant bowl, trapping all the exhaust fumes and dust inside with no way out. There is one shot in the documentary that really stuck with me. The camera pans across the entire valley from high above, and you can't even see a clear blue sky. Just this thick, gray-brown toxic fog. Living inside that fog are millions of people. On the streets, almost everyone's wearing thick masks, but even that can't stop those tiny particles from drilling their way into their lungs. 365 days a year, the air quality index here regularly goes off the charts, often breaking through 300 or even 400, reaching extremely dangerous levels. So why is it like this? Well, it has got everything to do with the local development model around the edges of the Kathmandu Valley. There are hundreds of brick kilns packed together. To save money, these kilns burn low-quality coal, and sometimes even industrial waste and plastic. When night falls, those towering smokestacks start spewing out black smoke like crazy. The documentary doesn't just deliver a visual punch, it gives you this suffocating feeling of not being able to breathe. A lot of the people working in these brick kilns are teenagers. They're doing manual labor for 12 to 14 hours a day. Their faces are covered in black coal dust. Only their eyes still have any light in them, with the constant roar of machinery all around them. How much longer can those eyes keep shining in such brutal conditions? These kids don't have childhoods. They don't have education. Just day after day of hauling bricks and breathing in deadly fumes. Now, let's talk about the Bagmati River, which Nepalists call their mother river. To Hindus, the Bagmati is an incredibly sacred river. They believe that bathing in it can wash away all your sins, and if you are cremated on its banks, your soul can achieve liberation. But when the documentary's camera zooms in, what do you actually see? Black, stinking mud. All kinds of household trash floating on the surface, dead animals, and untreated industrial wastewater being dumped straight in. There is this thick layer of chemical foam rolling across the water, glowing with these weird colors. Near the famous Pashupatinath temple, the burning ghats, hundreds or even thousands of bodies are cremated here every day. As the cheap wood and a little bit of sandalwood burn, acrid smoke shoots up into the sky. In that smoke, you can actually smell burning hair and flesh. Pieces of unburned wood and ashes get shoved into the already overwhelmed river. And get this. Just a few dozen meters away from the cremation site, local people are actually bathing in that black water, even rinsing their mouths with it. Women are using that dirty foam-covered water to wash their clothes. The power of faith is strong. It makes people blind to the horrifying pollution right in front of them. This incredibly jarring contrast hits every viewer right in the chest. One person interviewed in the documentary said helplessly that of course they know the water's dirty, but between tradition and reality, they don't have any other choice. Following the documentary's perspective, we leave the dusty city center and head to a massive landfill on the outskirts of Kathmandu. You'd never guess that just a few kilometers from those sacred temples and tourist hotspots. There is this enormous mountain made entirely of modern garbage. Every day, hundreds of trucks loaded with household waste come rumbling in, dumping thousands of tons of trash down the slope. On this garbage mountain that reeks with a nauseating smell, flocks of vultures circle overhead. And even sadder than the vultures are the scavengers struggling through the garbage heaps. Among them are old people and barefoot children. They're holding wooden sticks with hooks on the end, searching through rotting food scraps, discarded plastic bottles and blood-stained medical waste for anything they can turn into a few pennies. The toxic leachate from decomposing garbage flows down the mountain like black blood, seeping straight into the groundwater system. This isn't just an ecological disaster, it is a humanitarian crisis. Local residents drink contaminated water year after year, and the rates of gastrointestinal diseases and skin conditions are through the roof. Meanwhile, the tourists in the city center sipping their fancy lattes have no idea that the plastic cup they casually toss away will eventually become part of the mountain, crushing these people at the bottom. Which brings us to Tamil, Kathmandu's most famous tourist district. Here, you can buy all sorts of exotic wool shawls, handmade singing bowls, and beautifully printed thankas. The streets are lined with tastefully decorated cafes and Western restaurants. For many travelers seeking spiritual comfort, this is their vision of Nepal. But the documentary ruthlessly bursts this fake bubble. It is nothing more than a theme park carefully constructed to cater to Western tastes. You are here marveling at how peaceful everything is. But just a few blocks away, piles of garbage are rotting on street corners and stray dogs are scrounging for food in sewage puddles. The servers bringing you hot coffee might be going home after their shift to a slum where they can't even get clean drinking water. We come here with our arrogance and prejudices, trying to find some kind of purity in other people's poverty, while completely ignoring the real survival struggles they're facing. Isn't that incredibly selfish? This stark contrast gives the whole documentary this thought-provoking power. Maybe you are thinking, okay, cities are crowded, pollution is inevitable, but I can escape to the mountains and go hiking, right? After all, the Himalayas are the roof of the world. That place should still have Earth's most pristine purity. But friends, what comes next is going to completely shatter your last bit of fantasy. The documentary follows a mountaineering expedition, climbing higher and higher, from 3,000 meters all the way up to Everest Base Camp at over 8,000 meters. What you see along the way isn't just magnificent glaciers, it is garbage everywhere. Old oxygen cylinders left behind by previous climbers, torn up tents, colorful plastic wrappers against the white snow. They look especially jarring. Because of the extreme cold at high altitude, microorganisms can't break down this human-made trash. They sit there like ugly scars, permanently etched onto the mountain. Even more disgusting is that because there aren't proper waste disposal facilities, climbers' excrement gets dumped directly into crevasses in the glacier. As global warming melts the glaciers, this bacteria-laden waste flows downstream with the meltwater, contaminating the entire ecosystem. This place stopped being a pure sanctuary a long time ago. It has basically become the world's highest altitude garbage dump. In the death zone above 8,000 meters, you'll even find serious traffic jams. Hundreds of climbers queue up, slowly shuffling along cliff edges. Up there, morals and principles often get replaced by the extreme instinct to survive. If you see a dead body by the side of the trail, don't be shocked. At that altitude, carrying a heavy corpse down the mountain is pretty much an impossible task. Many bodies just stay there forever in the ice and snow, and they've even become landmarks that later climbers use to navigate. In this place that is supposed to purify your soul, humanity shows its purest ambition and coldest selfishness. What people abandon isn't just tents and oxygen tanks, it is their most basic respect for nature. In the documentary, there is this Sherpa who has been a high-altitude guide for years. His face is sunburned and scarred by the mountain's UV rays covered in deep wrinkles. He looks at all the garbage and just shakes his head helplessly. He says that the people who spend tens or even hundreds of thousands to come here all claim they're conquering nature, looking for their souls. But when they leave, besides a few photos to show off on social media, all they leave behind is this mess. To clean up this garbage, every year Sherpas risk their lives in what is called the death zone, hauling heavy oxygen tanks and waste down the mountain in extreme conditions. They're literally paying with their lives for the world's vanity. The documentary captures this incredibly dangerous avalanche, and in that avalanche, several guides who were on a cleanup mission closed their eyes forever. After seeing this, do you still think climbing Everest is romantic? Behind every so-called conquest is irreversible ecological destruction and the blood and tears of local people. Let's dig a little deeper into the greenwashing going on behind these slick tourism companies. A lot of international travel agencies advertise ecotourism and green travel, charging tourists huge fees. They promise to properly handle all waste and protect the local natural environment. But the documentary's investigative journalists secretly followed these so-called premium eco-tours. What they found was that while tourists were sleeping peacefully in their camps, the support staff were sneaking around under cover of darkness, burying piles of food waste, plastic packaging, and even old batteries in hidden valleys miles away. This is their idea of environmental protection. Tourists pay big money to feel good about themselves, but they're actually unknowing accomplices in destroying the environment. This kind of deception driven by commercial interests is infuriating. It robs consumers of their right to know while accelerating the destruction of this sacred land. On top of that, the collapse of the ecosystem is directly threatening local wildlife in the forests and around the temples near Kathmandu. There are tons of monkeys. They used to be spiritual symbols here, fed and protected by devotees. But in the documentary's footage, these monkeys are now scavenging through ruins full of plastic garbage. Many monkeys die in agony from intestinal blockages after eating leftover food still in its packaging. What is even more heartbreaking is when the photographer captured this mother monkey tightly clutching her dead baby, and the baby still had a colorful plastic bottle cap clenched in its mouth. This scene doesn't have much narration, but that silent accusation is more deafening than any words. Animals don't understand what modern civilization is, what industrial pollution is. They're just innocently paying the price for human greed. If you think pollution is just about visible garbage, you are dead wrong. The documentary's investigation team followed scientists to collect snow samples from the Himalayan mountains. The results were chilling. In this area, considered the purest snow region on Earth, scientists found massive amounts of microplastics. These microscopic plastics, invisible to the naked eye, get carried into the upper atmosphere by air currents, then fall here with the snow. When the glaciers melt, these microplastics flow down rivers into people's drinking water and even into the bloodstreams of animals and humans. This means that the place you thought was isolated from the world has actually been completely infiltrated by modern industrial toxins. This discovery is like a punch to the gut for every viewer. It is a reminder that on this planet, no corner can remain untouched. Every piece of fast fashion we consume in the city, every single-use plastic bag we use, could eventually become microplastics on the Himalayas, then cycle back into our own bodies through the water system. It is a terrifying cycle of cause and effect. Faced with such severe pollution, hasn't the local government taken any action? The documentary digs deep into this incredibly complex question. Nepal is an economically disadvantaged country, and years of political instability and lack of funding have left the government basically powerless when it comes to environmental issues. Building a comprehensive waste management system and sewage treatment network requires astronomical amounts of money, which for a country that can't even complete its basic infrastructure is basically impossible. When ordinary people can't even fill their stomachs, talking to them about environmental protection is kind of a luxury. The documentary interviews this young guy who founded a local environmental organization. He is wearing black-framed glasses, and his eyes are full of desperation and frustration. He has been running around everywhere, trying to get big companies to reduce plastic packaging, trying to educate people about sorting their garbage, but it rarely works. He tells the camera helplessly that here, survival is the first law. Environmental protection is just something rich people worry about after they've eaten their fill. That line is like a thorn stuck deep in my heart. It reveals a brutal truth. Environmental pollution has never been just a scientific problem. Behind it are deep economic inequalities and social contradictions. Developed countries transfer their pollution to developing countries, then stand on their moral high ground and criticize them for not protecting the environment. It is incredibly hypocritical double standards. After watching this 2-hour documentary all the way through, that oppressive feeling just won't go away. Close your eyes and think for a second. Why were we drawn to Nepal in the first place? It is because we're exhausted by the fast pace of modern life and we're desperate to find a haven that hasn't been polluted by materialism. We naively imagined the people under the Himalayas as carefree monks living in harmony with the world. But the reality is they're stuck in this quagmire of poverty and pollution with no way out. We go there not to cleanse our souls, but to tour other people's suffering. When you learn that underneath those colorful prayer flags are mountains of garbage, when you know that those sacred rivers are flowing with deadly poison, can you still comfortably take beautiful photos there and post some deep thoughts about life on your social media? This is why I said at the beginning that you'd regret watching this documentary, because it takes away your spiritual utopia and shoves a brutal, bloody real world right in your face. You can't pretend everything's beautiful anymore. You are seeing Earth's wounds, hearing nature's cries. But this regret is necessary. If only beautiful illusions can make us comfortable, then that comfort itself is extremely dangerous. True awakening isn't escaping to some fantasy paradise. It is bravely facing this broken world and trying to change something. We can't just be bystanders sighing cheaply in front of our screens. Even though we might not be able to fly to Nepal to clean up garbage ourselves, we can absolutely make changes in our daily lives. Every time we refuse single-use plastics, every time we choose to support sustainable products, every time we cut down on unnecessary consumption, we're actually lightening the burden on the Himalayan glaciers. The world is one whole organism, and the black smoke floating over the Kathmandu Valley will eventually affect every single one of us through atmospheric circulation. Sharing this documentary today, my feelings are just incredibly heavy. I am not trying to trash any country or sell you anxiety. I just hope we can tear away that romantic veil and see the real logic of how this world operates. The real world is often imperfect, even full of pain. But only by embracing reality can we find a real path forward. People who try to find peace in lies and filters will eventually get knocked down hard by reality. Tell me in the comments, if it were you, after learning these brutal truths, would you still put Nepal on your dream travel list? We don't just need to explore the world's beauty, we need the courage to stare at its scars. I hope today's sharing gives you some different things to think about.